How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samech Dal, Daf 64 of Masech Avodah Zarah. Friends, okay, Daf Samech Dal of Masech Avodah Zarah is basically the structure for Daf Samech Dal of Masech Avodah Zarah is three sort of anecdotes, maybe you could say, regarding, involving Rav Nachman, Ula, Avimi bar Papi, and Rab Chia bar Ami. This quadro, is that a word? Were kind of sitting together, and they were talking and learning a few different scenarios, and that's kind of the structure of today's daf. Those kind of three incidents. Now, the first one is being hired to destroy yayn nesech. That's an interesting sugya. It's a funny catch-22, right? On the one hand, we said that you can't accept wages for working with the nesech, but what if the work is to destroy it? That is scenario number one. Scenario number two is a gentile selling Avodah Zarah. If you have a gentile / an ovid kochavim who sells Avodah Zarah, the money that they receive for having sold their Avodah Zarah, is that money mutter or usher? Of course, if a yid were to sell Avodah Zarah, we learned that, of course, that money would be usher. But what if an ovid kochavim sells Avodah Zarah? Is that money that he receives for having sold Avodah Zarah mutter or usher? That is scenario number two, and really question number two that is discussed in scenario number two. And question number three in scenario number three is, which Gentiles can nullify Avodah Zarah? Do you have to be an Ovid Kochavim or do you have to actually be a card-carrying Ovid Kochavim, like actually like a worshipping Ovid Kochavim, a practicing Ovid Kochavim in order to nullify, to be Mevatel Avodah Zarah? Or can any non-Jewish person be Mevatel Avodah Zarah? Along the way, we will define what a ger toshav is. Three-way machlokas. So, Chaver, interesting daf today. I don't think it'll be too difficult. And yeah, so interesting daf, kind of these three different scenarios, which are kind of windows and entry, kind of basis, I guess you could say, for three interesting discussions. So here we go. We are going to get started on today's daf Samech Daled of Masech Avodah Zarah. Okay, friends. So our journey begins on daf Samech Gimel Amid Beis Shish. There's this little fly guy flying around. I think I mentioned the other days. It's like these little flies. It might just be a summer thing because I don't have any fly kind of bait around. We're going to start off Samech Gimel Amid Beis, about 5-10 or so lines from the bottom. Yosef Rab Nachman Ve'ula Ve'avimi bar Papi. Oop, dang. So I don't think I got it. Anyways, so Rav Nachman, Ula, and Avimi bar Papi were sitting with Yosef Rab Chia bar Ami Gabayu. Rab Chia bar Ami was sitting with them. So again, there was this trio: Rav Nachman, Ula, Avimi bar Papi, and Rav Chia bar Abi was sitting. Rav Chia bar Ami was sitting with them. Taisvis points out that usually when you have such a structure, a construct of like there were these three rabbis and there was a fourth one kind of tagging along. So Tosfos points out that usually when you have that kind of structure, the tag-along person, so in this case, Reb Chia bar Ami, usually is going to be mechadish something. Over here, he's taka not mechadish anything. So Tosfos suggests that maybe this is related to a similar anecdote that exists in Masechta Ksubis, and it was part of, and there, Reb Chia bar Ami did taka have epis to contribute, and it was in that same sitting, so we kind of mention it here where it's relevant, but it's based on that initial setting, scenario. But anyways, yeah, the point being that Tosfos points out, usually when you have this kind of a structure, the tag-along person is gonna have some kind of a chiddush, which actually doesn't play out in our scenario here, because Rav Nachman's going to be the one doing the talking. But here we go. So Yosef Rav Nachman, Vula Avimi bar Papi. So Rav Nachman and Ula and Avimi bar Papi were sitting. V'Yosef Reb Chia bar Ami Gabayu, and Reb Chia bar Ami was with them. V'Yosef v'Komi Ba'ilu, and they asked the following question: Scharo lishbor b'yayn nesech Mao. Miaminan Kevin there was a bikumo osir. Odilma kolim ute tifla shapir dami. Have you heard the kasha? As I pointed out in the introduction, it's an interesting shaila. While we had said that wages, a person cannot be hired to work with the yayn nesech, and if he is hired to work with the yayn nesech, so the wages he will receive will be also will be off limits, will be forbidden. But the Gemara asks, what if the work though is to actually destroy Avodah Zarah? It's interesting. Catch 22. Look, on the one hand, you're being hired to work with the nesech, but that work is actually to destroy a nesech. And so the Gemara asks from an interesting angle, which is rotze b'kiyuma, which is an interesting thing. Like on the one hand, you would think that it's like virtuous, right? He's being hired to destroy Avodah Zarah. It's a virtuous thing. But the funny catch 22 there is like, at the same time, he would be kind of upset. He would be kind of upset if the yayn nesech just kind of broke on its own without needing him to be hired to do the job, right? There's like a conspiracy theory about doctors, right? Without getting into the conspiracy theory or to ruffle any. This is probably not a smart thing for me to talk about, but it's just it's a good metaphor. Oy vavoy. Wait, why am I? Because it's a good metaphor. That's why. I don't believe in conspiracy theories, and I don't believe. Why am I even getting into this? Sharna is an amazing doctor, I'm sure, and this is. Why am I even getting into this? As I'm sure is Reb Neil, I'm sure is an incredible doctor, and it's so stupid for me to get involved into this conspiracy theory, but it's just such a good metaphor. So I'm going to say it, even though it's a conspiracy theory. And anyways, there is like, people say like, well, doctors, it's like a business, and, the patients are the clients. And so, the doctors really want people to get sick so that way they can heal them and make money off of it. And the thing is, if the person would have actually gotten, healed on their own, so then chaval for the doctor, he can't make money off of it. So the point being, like, how virtuous is it really? Okay, again, I don't believe that. I think doctors are amazing, especially the doctors at Babylon Talmud. They're amazing for more than just being doctors. They're also part of Babylon Talmud. But anyways, the point being is that you have this kind of virtuous thing, right? But the question is, how virtuous is it, right? So I feel so stupid for bringing up that example. Whatever. It's just a good metaphor. Even if you don't believe in it, it's a good metaphor. It's just such a sticky thing to bring up. Anyways, so the question is, you have this virtuous thing, but how virtuous is it really, right? And then the litmus test would be, well, if the barrels of yayn nesech would have broken on their own, chaval, right? Because now, well, he just lost his job, right? So, like, on the one hand, you could say, wow, he's a great guy, he's destroying yayn nesech, right? On the other hand, it's like he's also profiting off of yayn nesech, right? So that's kind of the question here. Okay, so Yosef of Nachman v'Ulav Avim bar Papi Yosef Reb Chia bar Ami Gabai v'Yazov v'Komi Bailu, and they asked the following question: Scharu lishbar b'yayn nesech mal. So if a person is hired to break yayn nesech, it's like kind of his catch-22. On the one hand, he's hired, so he's profiting off of it. On the other hand, he's also destroying it. So mutter or aser? Mirmin came there wrote the bikiyumo aser. Do we say, well, on the one hand, how much does he really want the yayn nesech to cease to exist? Because if it would cease to exist literally right now, before he has the opportunity to save the day, well, then that would be bad for him. Rotzakumo, he wants the yayn nesech to exist so that he could be the one to break it. Odumor duzek, look, call lemute tifla shapir dami. Destroying yayn nesech, any destroyer of yayn nesech any friend of yayn nesech destruction is a friend of mine. So do we say that? Right? Kol lemute tifla, if you are reducing narishkeit shapir dami, it's good. Rav Nachman, just to clarify, again, to reiterate, I went into such sticky waters. I love all doctors. They are amazing. Really. Especially Babylon Talmud doctors. Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman, Yishbar b'tavay lav bracha. Let him break let him get rid of the yayn nesech, v'tavo alav bracha, and may he be blessed. And therefore, to respond to the conspiracy theorists who say that, doctors have some kind of agenda, well, here you go. You can answer them from Rav Nachman that say, I don't care. Agenda, no agenda. Tavo alav bracha. There you go. We're asking about the yayn nesech people, and we're saying yeah, but they have their own interests. They're profiting off of yayn nesech. Well, let them profit all they want. They're doing something good. They're doing something virtuous. They're destroying yayn nesech. And we love our doctors. Especially Talmud doctors. So there's the Gemara's answer to the conspiracy theorists. Okay. So Yishbar v'tava alav bracha. Fine. So let's say that the following supports Rav Nachman. In Odrin ima ovid kuchavim b'kilayd. Okay, this is also interesting. I don't really have so many Tosfos takeaways here because there aren't big Tosfos, but they're there's an interesting shaila here about this taka I probably could have had it. Why did I not make a Tosfos? This taka could have a Tosfos takeaway over here, but anyways, I don't have one. But it's just quickly, it's an interesting shaila, right? We're talking about in Ojin in Ma'ovid Kochavim B'Kilai. That it's talking about where an Ovid Kochavim owns land. So we're saying in Ojin in Ma'ovid Kochavim B'Kilayim. So we're saying, so basically what we're saying is that an Ovid Kochavim is shaykh Kilayim as well, not to plant different things together. So we're saying, even though it's the Ovid Kochavim's field, so a Yid can't hoe the field with the Ovid Kochavim if it's Kilayim, implying that Kilayim also applies to an Ovid Kochavim's field as well. Okay, fine. Where am I? Okay, where are we? Okay, all right, fine. Said it. Okay. Anyways, I should have, somehow I missed that one. Fine. Anyways. So you can't, a Yid cannot hoe together with an Ovid Kochavim when it comes to Kilayim, right? If the Ovid Kochavim has a field and he's got Kilayim planted in the field, so a Yid cannot help the Ovid Kochavim work that field. Aval, but Okrin Imo but one can be hired, a Yid can be hired to work together with an Ovid Kochavim in order to unravel Okrinimo Kedelamute as a tifla. But one can uproot Kilayim with the Ovid Kochavim in order to get rid of Kilayim. Okay, interesting. Okay, so we see here that while a person cannot be hired to work a Kilayim field, he can be hired to remove Kilayim from the field. So money, Rabbi Akiva, and we want to say that this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. What does Rabbi Akiva say? The Rabbi Akiva says, Hamakayim b'kilayim loke. That says Rabbi Akiva, somebody who's mekayim kilayim. So for example, right, if there's kilayim in a field and a person doesn't plant kilayim, but he, let's say, builds a little fence around the kilayim in order to preserve it. So that's mekayim kilayim, to preserve kilayim. It says Rabbi Akiva, you're not allowed to preserve kilayim in a field. The sign is menachesh, somebody who weeds, or somebody who covers a seed, b'kilayim, when we're talking about kilayim, loke, he gets makis. So somebody who weeds a kilayim field or covers a kilayim seed mixture, so gets makis. Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva, afa mekayim, even somebody who's mekayim, even though he doesn't plant or weed or work the field, but even just puts up a little fence around the kilayim, that would also be enough for him to get makis. Tosfos Taka points out that Dafka Rabbi Akiva, who holds lav she'ein bo maise ein lo kinolav, that in order to get makis you have to do a maise. So therefore mekayim doesn't mean to just leave it there. It means to Dafka do something, to Dafka put a fence around the kilayim. My time is Rabbi Kiva. Why does Rabbi Kiva say that one who's Mikayim Kilayim is Chayev Makis? Because the pasuk says Sadcha Lusizur Kilayim. Well, when the pasuk says don't plant Kilayim in your field, Ainli Ela Zoreya. All I know is planting Kilayim in the field. Mikayim Minayim. How do I can't even keep it there? Kamlom, as the pasuk says, Lo Kilayim. You can't have Kilayim. You can't even keep it, right? This is, I think, a reference to I think Rashi highlights this. It's a little bit of a weird way that the Gemara says it, but I think the point is, right, Kilayim Sod Chalo, right? The Karma Chalo is more Lasigers or Kilayim or something, and then it says Sod Chalo something Kilayim. Basically, there's a juxtaposition of Kilayim and Sodcha to teach that you can't have Kilayim in your field, even if you don't plant it, but it being in your field, being Mekayim it in your field is a problem. Ve'ilu lemute tifla shari. And even so, lemute tifla shari, right? If you go back to the top of Samachtal Ramav, it says, Aval okrid imo kidei lemute esa tifla. Right? We said that even though you can't hoe with an ovid krichavim in his Kilayim field, you can't contribute to the Kilayim in the field, but we said, okrin imo, you can uproot Kilayim. Now the thing is, so we want to say, this is according to Rabbi Kiva. Now Rabbi Kiva, as we just learned, his opinion is that you're not allowed to be Mekayim Kilayim. You can't preserve Kilayim in a field. And yet, we want to say, this is according to Rabbi Kiva, who says that even though you're not allowed to preserve Kilayim, you're not allowed to be Mekayim Kilayim, but you can be hired to uproot Kilayim, even though, like we said by the yayn nesech, rotze b'kiyumo, you're going to want to be Mekayim the Kilayim there for so long as until you can come and destroy it, right? You're not really so noble, but you actually do want the Kilayim to be there so that you can be the one to save the day and destroy it. But in the meantime, until you destroy it, you want the Kilayim to be there. So even though Rabbi Kiva says it's also to be Mekayim Kilayim, still he's saying that you're allowed to be hired to uproot the Kilayim, even though you now have an interest in the Kilayim being there so that you can now come and uproot it. Oh. Tosfos Taka points out something interesting, which is like, technically, it's just a beautiful diuk of Tosfos. I think the diuk is more givaldig, is more beautiful than the way he answers it. But the diuk that Tosfos makes is actually, it's a little bit different, because what Rabbi Kiva says is that you're not allowed to do something. You can't build a fence around Kilayim. That's what you're not allowed to do. But maybe just to allow Kilayim to exist so that you can now come and destroy it. You're not doing anything. So why would I assume that Rabbi Kiva necessarily says that it's a problem? Anyways, the fact that you're right. So Tosfos says, well, the fact that you're preserving it in order to then destroy it, that like destroying it serves as like a kiyum, like the action that you ultimately take can kind of be applied to the whole situation, and that could be kind of an action. But anyways, but the shaila, I thought the shaila, the diuk was a very attentive diuk. Wow, it's so funny. There's like all these Tosfos in here, and when I was like reviewing and preparing the slides and stuff, I like totally spaced out. I'm sorry. I don't know how I totally spaced out when I was reviewing I don't know. Was I sitting? Sorry, friends. I totally spaced out when I was reviewing for this stuff. I'll call upon him. Well, not reviewing, making the slides after I had already reviewed it. Anyways, where are we? No, so we want to say that this is a riot for Rav Nachman. That Rav Nachman had said that Tovei Elav Bracha, that when it comes to yayn nesech, if a person wants to be hired to destroy yayn nesech, even though Rotze b'kiyumo Tovei Elav Bracha, and we're saying the same thing here. Let's say that when it comes to destroying the Kilayim with the Oivei Kuchavim, let's say that this is according to Rabbi Kiva, who says that you're not allowed to be Mekayim Kilayim, and yet you can be hired to destroy it, even though it's Rotze b'kiyumo, because Tovei Elav Bracha. Limute tifla Tovei Elav Bracha divaldim. To which the Gemara says, Hamani Rabbanani. Now you could say it's according to the rabbis who don't see anything about being Mekayim Kilayim. They don't necessarily have a problem with being Mekayim Kilayim, and therefore the fact that you're being Mekayim so you can destroy it isn't an issue. But Rabbanan, my irya okrin, I feel kayuminami shapedon. Well, if we're saying it's according to the rabbis, then why is the chiddush that you can destroy the kilayim? You can even keep it there, right? You can even just be right? You can even be makayim kilayim. Tell me you could just say that you can't hoe with the ovik chavim, but you can be makayim kilayim. You can actively contribute, but you can keep it there, and certainly you can destroy it. Right? So I feel you can even just keep it there according to the chacham. So here what are we talking about? Kigon de ka'ovid bechinam. Well, it's talking about, so it is the chachamim, but the chiddush here is that he's working to destroy the kilayim for free. Rabbi Yehuda and it's so beautiful. If you remember back on Daf Chof Amud Aleph, that it says lo sechonim, and we had learned it three ways. Lo sechonim is one thing was that you can't, I think, give them chanina or something. One is that you can't give them chanoya bakarka. Right. One is that I think you can't say like that they're like beautiful or something. One is that you can't give them chanoya bakarka, and the third one is you can't give them a matnas chinam. We then talked about nevela there, but lo sechinim. Right. We learned lo sechinim. So Rabbi Yehuda says you can't give an oved kachom a matnas chinam, a free gift. And here it's talking about the ovid, the ka'ovid bechinam, that the yid is uprooting the kilayim for free. So Rabbi Yehuda also that you're not allowed to give them a free gift. Okay, so and therefore the chiddush is that even though you're not allowed to give them a free gift, you are allowed to uproot kilayim in order to get rid of the isser. So now says the Gemara, okay, fine, but so what? So what? So we want to say that this is the rabbis, that this is the chachamim, right? And therefore they have no problem with being mekayim kilayim, and therefore certainly they have no problem with getting rid of kilayim. The chiddush was that, well, this is according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says you can't give any free gifts, and here he's doing it for, you can even do it for free. That's the chiddush. So, no. Fine, great, givaldik. Say it's the chachamim, say it's according to Rabbi Yehuda, fine. But the principle is the same, ladies and gentlemen, friends. The principle is the same. What's the principle? Well, you have Rabbi Yehuda, who says that you're not allowed to give matnas chinam to novik kachavim, and yet limute tifla, to get rid of kilayim, it's permitted. So even if you want to say it's a chachamim to Rabbi Yehuda, but the principles can be applied to Rabbi Akiva as well. That even if you're Rabbi Akiva and you say that you're not allowed to be makayim kilayim, but in order limute tifla, to destroy it, you can do that, and that's fine, and therefore it can be a raya for Rav Nachman, who said, right, and therefore even though you're not allowed to be makayim yayn nesech, but to destroy it, it could be okay. So matnas chinam aval limute tifla shaper dam Rabbi Akiva nami. Wait, where am I? So Rabbi Yehuda nishma Rabbi Akiva. So let us apply from Rabbi Yehuda to Rabbi Akiva. That's just like Rabbi Yehuda says you can't give them a free gift, but to get rid of kilayim, it's okay. So now let's say the same thing for Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yehuda, did Rabbi Yehuda not say that while it's osur to give a gift to novik kachavim, you can provide free labor in order to get rid of kilayim? So Rabbi Akiva nami, let's say the zel b'zach according to Rabbi Akiva. Avagab dam Rabbi Akiva hamakayim kilayim loke. That even though Rabbi Akiva says that you get makis for being mekayim kilayim, for keeping kilayim around, but lemute tifla shaper dami, if you're keeping it around so you can come and now destroy it, that could be that should be okay, and therefore we could apply the same thing to Rav Nachman and say, right, it's a support for Rav Nachman that you can destroy yayn nesech and be hired to destroy yayn nesech and tovel bracha v'sulo midi, and that is settled. Okay, and now we move on to the second anecdote, the second segment of today's Daf, a Gentile selling Avodah Zarah. Now, so this quadro was sitting tzazam and nochamo, and they asked the following question to me: So if you have an oved kachavim who sells Avodah Zarah and he receives money for it, he receives a payment, is that payment usher? Of course, if a yid would do that, yes, the payment would be usher. What about an Oivik Kachov? Where am I? Mitofeses domeo biad Oivik Kachavim olo. Does the Avodah Zarah extend to the money received for it or not? Is that money also or not? Omlu Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman once again responds. He says to them, Mistavra Demei Avodas Kachavim biad Oivik Kachavim mutari. So Nachman says, it would seem like the money is permitted. Because there were these Gentiles who came to convert to Judaism, and they came to Rabbi Bar Avua. Armelu and Rabbi Bar Avua says to them, Zilu zvinu kol ma deislichu visu isgairu. So there were these of the Kachavim who were going to convert, or I guess prior of the Kachavim, it's not going to come up in a second, that there were these Gentiles who wanted to convert to Judaism, and Rabbi Bar Avua suggested to them that before you convert to Judaism, why don't you go out first and sell all of your Avodah Zarah? Because once they convert to Judaism, they can't sell their Avodah Zarah. They can't sell their Avodah Zarah. Tosfos Taka says, well, maybe they could maybe they could have also broken the Avodah Zarah and then sold the pieces or something, but they wanted to sell the whole thing. Anyways, so Rabbi Bar Avua suggested to them, why don't you sell your Avodah Zarah before you convert to Judaism? And that way you'll convert with the money that you've received for it, and that money will be okay. So there you have it. The money is okay. Right, so again, midahanu, also the comment of Bar Avua, there were these Gentiles who came to Rabbi Bar Avua, and Rabbi Bar Avua suggested to them, Zilu zvinu koma de'eslichu. Why don't you first sell any of Avodah Zarah that you have before you convert Visu is Gairum, and then convert my timer? How come? La mishum tikasav is not because Rabbi Bar Avua holds the me'avodis kachavim bi'adovit kachavim mutarin, that the money received for Avodah Zarah by an Ovid Kachavim is permitted, and therefore Rabbi Bar Avua suggested, while you're still an Ovid Kachavim, sell your Avodah Zarah, get some money, and then convert, and you'll have some extra money. V'dil Mashani awesome. So the Gemara says, maybe that's a shtickle different over there. How come? Well, Kevon dechem dedaite leigure vadei batla. Well, sounded like these were Gentiles who were like literally on the final stages of conversion to Judaism, which means that probably a long time prior they had already, what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't know. Like gotten rid of somehow, distanced themselves, I don't know what word I'm thinking of, from Avodah Zarah. They're about to convert to Judaism. They probably were mevatel any Avodah Zarah that they already have. So therefore you can argue that, well, maybe the only reason why that money was permitted because they were already mevatel the Avodah Zarah. Okay, fine. Right, they're about to convert to Judaism. Of course, they're not being over the Avodah Zarah anymore. Elo mehacha, but rather I will prove it from here. Yisrael she'eino sheba'avik kachavim mana. If you have a yid who lent 100 zuzes to an avik kachavim, a yid lends 100 zuzes to an avik kachavim, and payment day arrives, and the yid says to avik kachavim, hey, can I have my 100 zuzes? Umacha avodas kachavim behevi lo, nesech behevi lo. And the avik kachavim pays back the yid, sure, pays him back 100 zuzes. But to get those 100 zuzes to pay back the yid, he needed to sell Avodah Zarah, or he had to sell yayn nesech. And the 100 zuzes that the avik kachavim was paying the yid was money received for having sold for the sale of Avodah Zarah, or yayn nesech. Mutter. The halacha is, it's mutter. The money is permitted. However, im amarlo hamtin liat she'emkor avodas kachavim ve'avi licha yenesech v'avi licha. Oh, interesting. But if the avik kachavim says, I don't have 100 zuzas right now, but just wait for me. I have some Avodah Zarah, I have some yayn nesech. I'm going to sell that. I'll have some cash, and I'll pay you back your 100 zuzas. In that case, osir. In that case, it's not allowed. Maishna Reisha, Maishna Seifa. What's the difference? How come in the Reisha, when he sold his Avodah Zarah, his yayn nesech, he was able to pay that money to the Yid, but in the Seifa, he was unable to? Because the difference is, Rav Sheshes says, Rav Sheshes, Seifa Mishum Dahava Lei, Ki Rotze B'Kiyumo, says Rav Sheshes, because in the Seifa, it's Rotze B'Kiyumo. Right? What's the difference in the Reisha and the Seifa? Well, in the first place, in the Reisha, so a Yid had lent 100 zuzas to an Oved Kuchavim. Comes payday, the Oved Kuchavim pays back the Yid. Where did the money come from? He sold Avodah Zarah. He sold yayn nesech. Okay, said it. Fine. We're saying that the money for having received yayn nesech, for the money for having sold yayn nesech, Avodah Zarah, we're saying it's for an Oved Kuchavim to sell Avodah Zarah, yayn nesech, we're saying it's mutter, and therefore that's no problem. However, in the Sefer, when he says, wait, I'm going to, just wait up, let me go and sell some Avodah Zarah, let me sell yayn nesech, in that case, we're saying it's a problem for the Yid to receive that money because Rotze B'Kiyumo. Because, of course, when the Oved Kuchavim says, I'm going to go and sell some Avodah Zarah, sell yayn nesech, the Yid says, okay, well, I hope that Avodah Zarah doesn't break before he has a chance to sell it. I hope that Avodah Zarah is in good shape so that he can get top dollar for it and I can get paid back. So in that case, the Yid wants it to continue to exist so that the Oved Kuchavim can sell it and make some money and he'll get paid back. So that's the problem with the Seifa. Again, Tosfos points out that there's a lot of Tosfos on this daf and no Tosfos takeaways. I feel a little bit chaval about that. It means I didn't prepare. It means I didn't do the final stages of preparation properly. So my apologies, friends. Hakuponim, but it's all here. All the Tosfos in are here. Tosfos points out that can't that just be an excuse, right? Any Oved Kuchavim, easy, right? Easy. Oved Kuchavim, easy script. Oved Kuchavim borrows 100 zuzas from a Yid, comes payday, says, oh wait, let me just go sell some Avodah Zarah and I'll pay you back. All of a sudden the Yid can't collect. So Tosfos answers that it's only going to be an issue when there's nowhere else to collect from. Right? If there's nowhere else for the Yid to collect from, he's dependent on the Oved Kuchavim selling his Avodah Zarah. So then, in that case, he's Rotze B'Kiyumo, and it'll be a problem. But if he has a guarantor, or there's other ways for him to collect, he doesn't need the Oved Kuchavim to sell this Avodah Zarah. So then, actually, it would be permissible, and he says, and he would be able to collect that money, and it isn't just a sort of hack for the Oved Kuchavim to just say, oh, I got to sell my Avodah Zarah, and now he doesn't have to pay him back. That would only be when mamish, that's the only way that the Yid could be paid back. Okay. But now, frag the Gemara, is Rotze B'Kiyumo really that big of a deal that it would make it usher for the Yid to collect? If the Oved Kuchavim says, well, I'm just going to go and sell some Avodah Zarah, now the Yid wants it, Rotze B'Kiyumo, therefore it's a problem. But V'atanam, we learn in the Mishnah, Ger v'Oved Kuchavim sheyarsha avin Oved Kuchavim. So if you have a fellow who converted to Judaism, you have a Yid Oved Kuchavim converted to Judaism, okay, and now his father who did not convert to Judaism, his father died, and now he, the Yid, and his brother who also did not convert to Judaism, who's an Oved Kuchavim, are dividing up their father's estate. Now, technically, when Gershon is Gari Kikut and Shenoy Ladami, that a person converts to Judaism, it's like, he's like a brand new person, and his father technically isn't his father, and technically it's not Yerusha, but anyways, he inherits his father, and he's dividing it up with his brother. So, Vatana Ger, so you have a convert and his brother who's an Oved Kuchavim, Sheyarsha avin Oved Kuchavim, who are inheriting their father who was an Oved Kuchavim. So Ger Yachol Amar Lo, so the brother who is Jewish can say to his brother who is not Jewish, Tol ata avodas kuchavim bani mos. How about this? because I'm Jewish, I can't accept the Avodah Zarah. So why don't you take our father's Avodah Zarah? So let's say the estate was worth $100,000, $50,000 worth of Avodah Zarah, let's say $50,000 in cash. The Jewish brother can suggest to his non-Jewish brother, why don't you take the Avodah Zarah, because I can't take it. Why don't you take the Avodah Zarah, and I'll take the cash, the liquid assets, the cash. And like that, I'll be able, we're both getting the same amount, but mine will be from stuff that I can collect, and yours will be from stuff that you can collect, and all good. Where am I? So Ger Yachol Omar Lo Tol'at Avodas Kechavim Vani Mos Tol'at yayn nesech Vani Peris. Or he could suggest his brother, why don't you take the yayn nesech and I'll take the fruits? Im Shabar Lushas Agir Aser. If the Jewish brother makes this suggestion after he's already received the Avodah Zarah or the yayn nesech, well then it's too late. At that point he can't. It would have to be in advance. But now what about the fact that it's also b'kiyuma? What about the fact that the Jewish brother, wants the Avodah Zarah to exist so that the brother is being paid with something? If the Avodah Zarah vanishes, well then they're going to have to split the cash. And they'll each get half as much. So the Jewish brother wants the Avodah Zarah to exist so that his brother can receive it. And we're saying that that's okay. Amrava bar Ula, Masnisa ba'avodas kechavim, hamischalekes lefi shvarel. Well, you could say that Mishnah with the inheritance is talking about Avodah Zarah that's like made out of gold or silver, that even if it breaks, it's still going to be valuable as gold or silver. So therefore it doesn't actually matter. It's not really Rotza B'Kiyuma because it doesn't actually matter if it breaks. Okay, fine. That makes sense for Avodah Zarah that's made out of gold or silver. Yayn nesech ma'ika l'meimer. But what about the fact that we said that also? He could say, you take the yayn nesech, I'll take the fruits. B'cheres hadayoni. Well, you could say, if you remember the Hadrianic shards, sharded wine. Right, the Hadrianic shards, it was the wine that seeped into the pottery, and the wine was so potent that even after you soaked it and diluted it 3 times, it was still better than our top shelf wine. So therefore, by that wine also, even if it breaks, it doesn't matter because the wine is still great. Yeah, but still, I mean, okay, breaking is one thing. What about the fact if it gets stolen or if it gets lost? That wouldn't be good for the Jewish brother. So he wants it to not get stolen. He wants the yayn nesech and the avodas kechavim. He wants to make sure it doesn't get lost, doesn't get stolen. That would be bad for him. So he's wrote to b'kiyuma. Hello, Amr Apope. Rather says a puppy. You know what? Yerusha Sager Ko Amart. 1 second. You're asking kashas from the highly sensitive topic of Yerusha Sager, of somebody who converted to Judaism, and now they're dealing with how to divide up his father's estate after his father dies. An extremely sensitive topic. Shiny Yerusha Sager da Kiluba Rabbanon. Look, when it comes to Yerusha Sager, the rabbis are particularly lenient. Gezer Shem Yachzul Kukulo, out of concern that he might go back to his previous ways, right? Meaning, if his father dies and they're dividing up the estate, and if it becomes impossible, he might end up saying somehow being negatively impacted in this highly sensitive situation, and might end up throwing away his Judaism and going back to how he was before. So in the interest of this, because it's a highly sensitive topic, the rabbis were more lenient and said, Rotza B'Kiyumo would actually be okay here. But in other scenarios, such as when a Yid lends 100 zuzas to Rova Kechavim, and he says, wait, while I go and sell this Avodah Zarah so I can pay you back, and the Yid now is Rotza B'Kiyumo, that would be a problem. By the highly sensitive topic of Yerusha Sager, the Chacham said that Rotza B'Kiyumo is okay, but in other scenarios it would not be okay. Tan Nam Yochi, we're also in a brace like this. When do we say that Rotza B'Kiyumo is okay? Sheyarshu. When we're talking about if he and his brother are inheriting his father, Avon Nishtatvu, but if there was some kind of a partnership and they're now dissolving the partnership, he cannot say, right? Also, he cannot say, well, why don't you take the Avodah Zarah and I'll take the assets? No, because there he actually, there would be an issue with Rotze B'Kiyumo in that scenario. But specifically by Yerusha Sager, we say that it would be okay, but in other contexts, Rotze B'Kiyumo would be an issue. And now we get up to the final segment of today's daf. Which Gentiles can nullify Avodah Zarah? Very interesting. I think I noticed this in the Rambam the other week, where the Rambam had said that only actually a practicing Ovid Kochavim can be Mevatel Avodah Zarah, and I was that we hadn't seen that so far. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So here, Taka the Gemara talks about this exact question. And Daf Samach Daled Amud Beis, a second line of the daf, Hoder Yasve V'Komi Bailu, a third time, this quadro, that's probably not a word, quadro, quinto? I don't know. Whatever. Hoder Yasve V'Komi Bailu, they were sitting zusammen and they frekted the following question. Ger Toshav Baushi Vatal Avodas Kochavim. Can a Ger Toshav be Mevatel Avodah Zarah? We're going to see a three-way machlokas soon about what exactly Ger Toshav is, but suffice it to say, he does not do Avodah Zarah. So, a Gentile who is not a Avodah Zarah worshipper, can he be Mevatel Avodah Zarah, or does the nullifier need to be a believer? Does he need to be a worshipper? So again, Adu Yasve V'Komi Bailu, they ask, Ger Toshav Maushi Vatal Avodah Zarah, can a Ger Toshav be Mevatel Avodah Zarah? The Palach Mavtil, the Le Palach Le Mavtil. Do we say in order Mevatel? But do we say in order to be Mevatel Avodah Zarah, you yourself have to be a worshipper or not? Oduma Lo Okol De Barmine Mevatel Vai Barmine U. Or do we simply say anybody who is of the same type, i.e. anybody who is a Gentile, can be Mevatel Avodah Zarah? Ovler of Nachman Mustafa the Palach Mevatel Le Palach Le Mevatel, says of Nachman, we could say that one who worships Avodah Zarah could be Mevatel Avodah Zarah. One who does not worship Avodah Zarah cannot be Mevatel Avodah Zarah. So the answer to our question is, can a Ger Toshav be Mevatel Avodah Zarah? No. Meisve, we have a kasha, however. Yisrael shemotza avodas kochavim bashuk. A Yid finds Avodah Zarah in the shuk. Were we talking about Shuk Machne Yehuda? Talking about Shuk Machne Yehuda, find Avodah Zarah in Shuk Machne Yehuda? I don't know. Acheloi basa liyado. So as long as the Yid hasn't picked it up, Armla Ovid Kochavim. Okay, so here actually the Agos Vitzunim changes Ovid Kochavim to Goy. So that's actually better because Ovid Kochavim implies a worshipper, but we're actually trying to figure out. But what we do know is that it's a non-Jew. So I'm going to swap for the next few lines Ovid Kochavim with Goy. That way to keep it kind of non-committal. So long as the Yid hasn't picked up the Avodah Zarah, he can say to a Goy, Umavatla, hey, can you nullify this Avodah Zarah for me? Mishabasa liyado. But if the Yid picks it up and he's kone it, well then, Eino Amala Ovid Kochavim Legoy Umavatla, he can't give it to a guy to be Mevatel the Avodah Zarah because once it belongs to the Yid, it can't ever be bottled. But so long as the Yid has not picked it up, he can say to a guy, hey, can you be Mevatel the Avodah Zarah for me? Mipnei she'amru, because they said, Ovid Goy Mevatel avodas kochavim shelo v'shel chavero. Number one, a goy can be mevatel his avodah zarah as well as his friend's avodah zarah. Well, in this case, Taka, we'd be talking about an ovid kochavim, right? If we're talking about his avodah zarah, so an ovid kochavim can be mevatel his avodah zarah as well as his friend's Avodah Zarah. Bein Ovda, bein she'ein Ovda, whether he worships it or not. My Ovda, my she'ein Ovda. What does that second statement mean, whether he worships it or not? If we're talking about an Ovid Kochavim, so then does Ovda v'lo Ovda mean whether it's he worships it because it's his, and he doesn't worship it because it's his friends? But that's Shelo v'shel Chavero. Hani Shelo v'shel Chavero. So if you say then Ovid Kochavim can mevatel his Avodah Zarah and his friends' Avodah Zarah, ben Ovda ben Shelo Ovda, whether it's his Avodah Zarah that he worships or whether it's his friends' Avodah Zarah that he does not worship, his friend worships it. But then that's the same thing as Shelo v'shel Chavero. Elo lav Ovda oved koichavim umay she'eno Ovda ger toshav v'shmamina ger toshav nami mevatel. So we want to suggest, no, you know what Ovda v'she'eno Ovda is? Whether he himself is a worshipper, whether he himself is an oved kochavim or not. Maybe he's just simply a ger toshav. He doesn't do Avodah Zarah, but he's not Jewish, so he could be mevatel Avodah Zarah. So we see from this brisa apparently that an oved kochavim could be mevatel his own Avodah Zarah. He can mevatel his friends Avodah Zarah, and whether he himself is a worshipper or even if he's a ger toshav, it sounds like a ger toshav can be mevatel Avodah Zarah. Lo, no. Le'olam emelach, I'll say to you, Idi v'idi oved kochavim. I will say that we're only talking about worshippers. We're only talking about ovdei kochavim. Okay, but then we're going to have to explain ovda v'lo ovda. And you said, well then, isn't the Reisha and the Sefer saying the same thing? Shelo v'shel chavero. Reisha zevaze lefor v'zevaze lemarkulis. Sepa ze lefor v'ze lemarkulis. So the Gemara says no. Shelo v'shel chavero means, let's say in a scenario where they're both markulis worshippers. That's their thing. They're both into markulis. So he can destroy his markulis. He can destroy his friend's markulis. And ben she'ovdo, ben shelo ovdo means if he worships markulis and his friend worships peor, so he can destroy the Avodah Zarah, whether it's markulis, which he is ovdo, which he worships, or whether she'ein ovdo, whether what he's destroying is peor, which he doesn't worship. That's also okay, right? So the Reisha focuses on Shelo v'shel Chaver, whether he owns it or not, and the Sefer focuses on whether he actually worships that Avodah Zarah or not. But it's entirely talking about a worshipper in Oved Kochavim. However, we can argue that the ger toshav cannot be mevatel Avodah Zarah. Meisvei, we have a kasha. Ezu ger toshav. What is the definition of a ger toshav? Very interesting question. Kol shekibel olav bifnei gimel chaverim. Somebody who accepted in front of 3 chaverim. I don't know exactly what chaverim is. Somebody has to do it like in front of, he has to like, a goy needs to accept this like in front of like yidden? I don't know. There's a gersa thing that gets rid of chaverim, but what does that help? I mean, who are these 3 that he has to make this commitment in front of? I'm not exactly sure, honestly. Shaloi lavad avodas kochavim. Divrei Meir. According to Meir, a ger toshav is a gentile who accepts in front of 3. I'm not exactly sure 3 who, but he accepts in front of 3 that he's not going to do Avodah Zarah. He's now a ger toshav. V'chacham omim, where does the chacham say, kol shekibel olav sheva mitzvahs shekibel lein b'nei noyach. Okay, I think that this is the commonly, I see that this looks like the Rambam agrees with this one. That, this is the generally accepted, I think, ger toshav is kol shekibel olav sheva mitzvahs shekibel lein b'nei noyach. A Gentile who adheres to the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, the 7 Noahide laws, so that is a ger toshav. Acherim omrim, others say, and as Tosfos Taka points out, normally we'll say Acherim is Rab Meir, but it can't be Rab Meir here because the Reisha is Rab Meir. Okay. Where am I? So Acherim omrim, Elu lobo lichlal ger toshav. Acherim says, no, these are not ger toshavs. Ele'ezu ger toshav ze ger ochel nevelis shekibel olav l'kaim kol mitzvahs amuris batorah chutz mi'isur nevelis. That says, Acherim, what's a ger toshav? It's not enough just not to do Avodah Zarah, or even the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, because everyone needs to do that. A ger toshav, the special status of ger toshav, is somebody who's mamish mekayim all of the mitzvahs. He's mekayim 612 mitzvahs, but he eats nevela, that's it. That's crazy. Wait, he keeps Shabbos? Interesting. He keeps 612 mitzvahs, but he eats nevela. That's a ger toshav. Interesting. Again, the ger ochel nevelas is a person who eats nevelas. Shekibel olav l'kaim. What's the dalet? Oh, okay. So shekibel olav l'kaim kol mitzvahs amuris batorah. He does all of the mitzvahs. Chutz mi'isur nevelas. You see, he eats nevela. He eats unslaughtered foods. That's it. Miyachdin etzlo yayn. You can temporarily stash wine with him. Mafkidin etzlo yayn. You can't store wine with him. Vafilu be'ir sheruba Yisrael. Even if it's a city where it's a majority of Yidden, you can't store your wine with him because we're concerned that maybe it'll get swapped with his own wine. But you can temporarily keep wine with him, even if there's mostly of the kochavim in the city, but since he doesn't do Avodah Zarah, you can temporarily store wine with him, and we're not concerned he's going to touch it, or he's going to allow other people to touch it, because he doesn't do Avodah Zarah, he's not into that stuff. Shamno kiyeno, we say that his oil is like his wine. Shamno kiyeno, what does it mean that his oil is like his wine? Sagadaitich. Shavin Mika have a nesech. I mean, oil doesn't, there's no libating, there's no concern about libating oil. So Ella, rather, yeno kishamno. Rather, his wine is like his oil, right? We had said, right before Rabbi Yehuda Nisiya allowed the oil of Ovdei Kochavim, we had said that the oil of Ovdei Kochavim is also b'shasiya but mutar bano. So we were saying, based on that the wine of a ger toshav would be also b'shasiya but mutar bano. V'lishar kol davar, but for all other things, for all other things, a ger toshav is like an oived kechavim. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon yayn nesech, that his wine is yayn nesech mamish v'amila mutar b'shasiya. Some say no, it's taka mutar b'shasiya. Kateni mia v'leshar kol davar harei k'ovei kochavim l'vayilchasa lav demavata avodas kochavim k'ovei kochavim. So this is the Gemara's kasha. So we said that this ger toshav, at the end of the day, we said l'shar kol davar harei k'ovei kochavim. That with all other things, aside from like storing wine with him and his oil, whatever, with regard to all the other things, is like an oved kochavim. Well, an oved kochavim can be mevatel Avodah Zarah, so does that not mean that a ger toshav can also be mevatel Avodah Zarah? So there, it sounds like an oved ger toshav can be mevatel Avodah Zarah. Chev, what do you say? What do you say? Right? It's not saying that a ger toshav can be mevatel Avodah Zarah like an oved kochavim can. Was sagst du? What say you? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak lo. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak nicht. A ger toshav may not be mevatel Avodah Zarah. Rather, litain rishus levatel rishus. Chaver, look at what this is talking about. Chaver, once upon a time, around 4.5 years ago, we learned Masechta Eruvin. Who remembers Masechta Eruvin? That was ages ago. Very difficult Masechta. But we did it. We learned Masechta Eruvin. In Masechta Eruvin, we learned about Eruvei Chatzeris. Who can tell me what Eruvei Chatzeris is? On Shabbos, of course, you're allowed to carry in Rishus HaYachid. Now, if you have several houses that open up into a shared courtyard, a shared space, even if that courtyard is entirely surrounded with walls, so it's a Rishus HaYachid, it's enclosed. However, because it is a shared space, let's say, I think I said 5 houses, let's say you have 5 houses that open up into that courtyard, into that shared space. So the Chachamim made a gezerah that we said we don't want you carrying in that shared area that's shaykh to all the people in the Chatzer, out of concern that if you carry there, you might end up carrying Rishus Harabim. So what you can do is you can make an Eruv Chatzeris. An Eruv Chatzeris. And to do that, each house would contribute a bread. They would keep all the bread in one of the houses, and then that would basically make it like they're all kind of in that, like it's all kind of one home. All the houses in the Chatzar are joined together, and it's like all like one home and one space, and they can all go into that shared space because they made Ne'uv Chatzeres. They joined together the whole Chatzar into we'll consider it to be one space. Now, in order for the Ne'uv Chatzeres to work, everybody needs to participate in Ne'uv Chatzeres. What if one person did not participate? Well, then you can't carry in the chutzner. You can't carry outside of your house. You need everybody to participate. What if one person didn't participate? So what you could do is you can go to him, I believe on Shabbos, and he could say, okay, I'm mevatel my rights to the chutzner. And he can give them his right. We're going to see in a second. No tel rishus, mevatel rishus. But Be'etzim he says, I'm relinquishing, let's say, my rights to the chutzner. And now he's not considered right. So it's not like 4 of the people contributed to the Eruv Chatzeres and 1 didn't. No, he's mevatel any rights that he has to the Chatzer. Anyways, he's out of the picture, and all the other remaining 4 people did make Eruv Chatzeres, and they can carry now in the Chatzer. Now, what if one of the homes in the Chatzer is owned by a non-Jew? Then what happens? So if that's the case, the non-Jew can't just relinquish his rights to the chutzner like the Yid can. They would rent his space from him. So he can't be mevatel his rights, but they can rent his space from him, and then now they can make an Eruv Chatzeres. So that is what we're saying, that the Ger Toshav is like an Ovik Chobin, L'chol Shar Dvarav, that when it comes to Eruv Chatzeres, just like by Novik Chobin, you would rent the space from him. Same thing by a Ger Tosha. So again, Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, Rav Nachman Yitzchak, no. It's not to say that Ger Tosha can be mevatel Avodah Zarah like an Ovik Chobin. No, he can't be mevatel Avodah Zarah. What it's saying is that he's like an Ovik Chobin with regard to Eruv Chatzeres. Litein Rishus, so Levatel Rishus, when it comes to giving and nullifying Rishus, which we'll explain in a few lines. Uchdetani, like we learn in the Brisa, Yisrael Mummer, a Yid who does Averis. He doesn't keep Shabbos. Mishamer Shabbatu B'shuk, but in public, he keeps Shabbos. In public, he keeps Shabbos. But in private, he doesn't. Mevatel Rishus, he can be Mevatel his Rishus, right? He could say to them, right, if he didn't participate in the Eruv Chatzeres, he could say, I'm relinquishing my rights to the Chatzer, and then they all made an Eruv Chatzeres together, and therefore they could carry in the Chatzer. She'ein Meshaber Shabbat or B'shuk, but if he doesn't keep Shabbos in public, ein Mevatel Rishus, he cannot be Mevatel Rishus, because they said Yisrael knows in Rishus, Mevatel Rishus. They said a Yid can give Rishus, be Mevatel Rishus, which we'll explain in a second, of Ovik Chovim, and by Ovik Chovim Ad Sheyiskor, they would have to rent his rights to the courtyard from him. Ketzad Omelo, Rishusi Knuya Lecha, Rishusi Mivuteles Lecha, Konev Ein Tzarich Lizko. So when it comes to the Yid, when we say no sin Rishus, Mevatel Rishus, no sin Rishus would be if the Yid says, Rishusi Knuya Lecha, that my Rishus, my rights to the courtyard is acquired to you, to the rest of the people. Rishusi Mivuteles Lecha, or my rights, I'm being Mevatel, I'm nullifying any rights I have, and they are yours. Kana, so then it is acquired by the other people in the Chatzar. Ve'ein tzarich l'zakas, you don't need to actually make any kind of a kinyan or anything like that. Just saying that would suffice. just saying that would suffice. So in that way, with regard to Eruv Chatzeris, a ger toshav is like every other Oved Kochavim. However, in terms of being mevatel avodah zarah, he cannot be mevatel avodah zarah. Rav Yehuda shadar kurbana the abidrana biyom edom. Rav Yehuda sent a gift to abidrana. It was some kind of a yom tiv there for avodah zarah. He sent a gift to abidrana. Omar Rav Yehuda said, Yadayna bey to the palach lavatus. I know that he doesn't worship avodah zarah. Therefore, it's okay. Rav Yosef, but Rav Yosef says to Rav Yehuda, "V'atani b'liner b'atz ezu ger toshav. Who would be considered a ger toshav? Kol shekibel olav b'fnei gimel chaverim. So lavod avodah tzcham. He would have to accept in front of 3 chaverim that he's not going to do avodah zarah. But Abidrana didn't do that. Kitanya ilach yoso. That's only with regard to after he's accepted not to do avodah zarah in front of 3 chaverim, which I guess seems to mean yidden, because meaning the point is once he's done that, now we have an obligation to sustain him and to support him, I guess financially or but to help him, to support him. So I guess that if that focuses on our responsibilities towards him, so I guess maybe if he accepts in front of 3 yidden not to do avodah zarah, so now we have an obligation to support him. But without going in front of those 3 chaverim, so why we wouldn't need to support him? Still, I guess we could send him gifts if he doesn't do avodah zarah. Okay. Okay, but what about the fact that Rabbi Abachana says in Rabbi Yochanan that a ger toshav who 12 months go by and he hasn't done bris milah, so he's like a heretic of the Chacham, and Abidrana hasn't done bris milah. That's only if he accepted upon himself that he would do bris milah but didn't. So then he would be like a heretic or whatever. But here he never accepted upon himself to do bris milah, and we're not talking about supporting him. We're just giving him a gift, and we're assuming that he doesn't do avodah zarah, and that is sufficient. Chevre, that was the samach dalid of Masechta Avodah Zarah. Once again, my apologies that I somehow skipped and missed preparing going over the Tosas properly before preparing the slides for this stuff. There were a few opportunities for a more musudar Tosas takeaways. I don't know how I missed them when I was reviewing, but anyways, so my apologies for that. We learned about being hard to destroy yayn nesech. That was a very interesting sugya. Can a person be paid in order to destroy yayn nesech? Because on the one hand, he's doing something virtuous by destroying yayn nesech. On the other hand, he kind of wants the yayn nesech to exist. That right, he's profiting off of yayn nesech, you could say. But Rav Nachman said, let him call him mutei tifla, right? Tavel of bracha, right? He said, what did he say? He says, Yishbor, let him break the yayn nesech, v'tavel of bracha, and he should be blessed. So that, right, okay. So that was being hard to destroy yayn nesech. A gentile selling avodah zarah. We said that if an Oved Kochavim sells avodah zarah, the money that he receives for it is mutter. But if it's rotze b'kiyumo, but if, right, in a scenario where we have an interest in the Oved Kochavim or in the avodah zarah kind of existing so that he could, so that the Oved Kochavim can sell it. For example, if you lent money to Oved Kochavim, he says, "Oh, let me sell it so I can pay you back." That would be a problem because it's rotze b'kiyumo. We talked about by the Yerusha Sager, by a convert who's dividing up an estate. However, we can be lenient when it comes to rotze b'kiyumo. And finally, the third section of today's daf was which Gentiles can nullify avodah zarah. So what we had said is davka a worshipper of avodah zarah can be mevatel avodah zarah. A ger toshav cannot be mevatel avodah zarah. And then we discussed who is a ger toshav. We saw 3 opinions about who is a ger toshav, but we said a ger toshav cannot be mevatel avodah zarah, but he would be considered like an Oved Kochavim in terms of Eruv Chatzeris, that the yin would rent from him his right to the Chatzer so that they can make Eruv Chatzeris. Chevre, that was Daf Samachdal, Daf 64 of Masechta Avodah Zarah. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.